Everybody hear me? Excellent. So, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this overview of the 10th annual RetailX Top 500 report. This session will give an overview of the report. There will be a QR code on the final slide that will allow you to download it in full. You can also just visit internetretailing.net, and there's a lovely little research and data tab. All of our sector reports, ranking reports, country reports are in there. So I'm Katie Searles. I'm editor of Internet Retailing. On a daily basis, I look after the sort of news. We do some podcasting, webinars, and a little bit of presenting when we're asked nicely. Everything I do is fueled by our research team, so I'm delighted to be joined by Martin Shaw, who's our research director for RetailX. And Martin, you've been with RetailX for the full 10 years of this report. Do you want to start with a little bit about you and the research as a whole?
Yes, thanks for that introduction. So I'm Martin Shaw, I'm the research director at RetailX. And my team and I have been benchmarking the performance of the UK Top 500 for 11 years now. And over that time, we've expanded the research to cover across Europe, and now we even do tens of thousands of companies around the world.
So it is the UK Top 500. For this session, we're simply going to look at the elite and the leading and give you an idea of sort of best practices. But because it fits nicely on one screen, this is what the top 100 looks like. It features brands, bricks and mortar stores, D2C operations, tech giants. There's a whole range of companies just in the top 100 alone that really highlight how diverse the UK retail sector is. We have a range on there from Pets at Home to Hugo Boss. We've got Wix, we've got the Amazons of this world, not surprising at all that they're on there. Dunelm's, TK Maxx, Ryman's. There is a vast range. Martin, to get onto this top 100 list, what do you have to do?
Well, to be featured in the top 500, we first look at the significance of companies. So we measure their revenues, their web traffic, the number of stores they operate, how much app usage they have, and the biggest ones across those different measures make it into the list. So that's the membership, the 500. Then once we've got the 500, we benchmark them all across hundreds of different metrics of various kinds of performance. And at the end of that, we've got a ranking. And what we show is we show clusters, and within each cluster, they're alphabetical here.
The report also breaks it down further and looks at sectors and categories. A massive 38.4% of the retailers in this list are in the fashion sector. We have seen a shift over the last 10 years from it being really retailer heavy to brands and marketplaces coming through. That's something that's only going to continue and we'll touch on later. To get into that leading category, you're really doing the best that you can to get that customer wallet at a time that continues to be really hard for consumers. People are starting to look for quick delivery, free returns, something we'll cover later. But even just this morning, Next announced that they're upping their guidance once more, and it looks likely that they'll hit £1 billion in profit this year. Because we had to submit the slides 2 weeks ago, we didn't stick Next on here, but they are an elite retailer. Part of this is driven by their ability to flex, to change from what used to be a catalogue to a third-party giant. Next's total platform allows consumers to buy everything on one platform, and that's then combined with a store network of over 500. So you'll see in a minute, we'll show you an example of Amazon's, but in the report we track all retailers, we track their profits, and it's a sort of snapshot of how well these brands are doing. next profit one would look particularly good if we were able to include it today. Martin, can you tell us a little bit more about those metrics and what's in the report?
Certainly. So I mentioned before we've got a couple hundred metrics. They are covering all sorts of different retail craft, as we call it, so everything from customer service to the fulfillment offer they have. Really what we look for is we take the customer's perspective, we say what is more convenient, what is easier for the customer, therefore it is better. Obviously that's not the same thing as better necessarily for a company, but it is a consistent metric that we're able to apply to all companies, whatever sector they belong to. And within the list, we divide those metrics up into 4 different value chains. They're customer, product, operations, and capital. And you get a performance ranking for each company in those 4 different areas. And then we have an overall performance, which is a summary of those 4 things.
Thank you. And so the second chart, the pie, this looked completely different in 2014. If you think of what retail was 10 years ago, it was mostly made up by retailers. There's a massive shift where brands are becoming increasingly important, as are marketplaces. But the line between retailers and marketplaces is becoming blurred. 2 years ago, B&Q launched their marketplace. And for the first time you could buy a kettle, which you wouldn't necessarily be able to in one of their big stores. Tesco's has recently just relaunched their marketplace and are trying again in that space. We're going to see retailers increasingly look at a marketplace offering, especially as they continue to be third-party sellers. For the definition of this though, Martin, what is a retailer and what is a marketplace?
Good question. So we've defined marketplaces as websites that host third-party sellers, and we've defined brands here as companies that mostly sell own label products. And for the small number of companies that actually fall into both those categories, we're calling them marketplaces here. So as Katie said, like, they have increased now 11%. Something not shown here, we can't put all the charts up, but those marketplaces are responsible for more than half of the unique web visits to top 500 companies in the UK.
If we just take a quick hands up, who has shopped on eBay? Amazon. So, not on the high street? Okay, so all marketplace users. But again, these lines are blurring. Would you know the difference between B&Q's DIY.com website and B&Q's marketplace? No? Consumers are not meant to know the difference. You're meant to just be able to find a wider range. I only discovered last week that Currys sell hot tubs. Not in stores, but on a marketplace offering. It is becoming a really interesting ecosystem for retailers. So on to the elite and leading. As we know, things continue to be tough for consumers. Cost of living is not going anywhere. That consumer wallet is tight. And to get into this elite and leading category, retailers are having to do so much more. They're having to make sure that it's easier for customers to buy when and where they want it. There's also a new dimension. Consumers are looking for retailers to be green, and for them to be transparent about it, and for them to be truthful about it. So sustainability has really come into its own this year, Martin, hasn't it?
That's right. So we've benchmarked the top 500 for how sustainable they are. That, in terms of sustainability, what we're actually measuring is we're measuring what they're committing themselves to, and we're measuring how transparent they are about that in terms of reporting and in terms of independent reporting on their performance as well. So our Consumer X research, which is focused on customers and is one of the data services that we have within RetailX Intelligence, we've measured UK population over the last 4 or 5 years, how they feel about sustainability and what they want from retailers, and we've found that they increasingly want retailers to be more sustainable, but at the same time most of them don't want to pay anything extra for it. So it's quite a challenging space for retailers, as I'm sure you're all aware.
It's such an interesting balance between wanting to purchase green and wanting something conveniently and quickly. It might not surprise you that Amazon are the only retailer or marketplace that have been in the elite category for the full 10 years of the report. There's some changing around between everybody else, but for the full decade, these guys have been in it, and this is why. This is our RetailX intelligence charts, and you can just see from the profit one, the blue lines are comparing Amazon with everybody else, and that's where Amazon are at. Again, it probably doesn't surprise anybody here. We also compare the delivery convenience. Raise of hands, who has had Amazon Prime delivery? Amazon set the benchmark for next day delivery, and you can see year on year they're topping it. Interestingly, it's fallen off slightly from 2021. This is probably because it's taking into the consideration the COVID factor. But they are, again, leading in convenience, fast delivery. They also scored really well this year for recommendations and their ability to allow consumers to post reviews that are verified. They've recently launched an AI tool to make sure that the descriptions on the products are as transparent as they can be. Martin, so these charts are different from what's in the actual report. The report was published earlier this year, and since then we've been working away, I say we, not me, these smart gentlemen here, have been working away in the background to create RetailX Intelligence. It's going to be a platform that allows you to, at a thumbprint, access charts like this. Because I've not worked in it, Martin, clearly just waffling, can you tell us more about RetailX Intelligence?
Certainly. So RetailX Intelligence is a suite of data services. Basically, we've been measuring retailers for 11 years. We do it across the world. We've got some consistent benchmarks and ways to compare them in key areas of retail performance. What we've done is we've taken that data and we've turned it into a user-driven app. So you go to the website, you can look at any company. We've got Amazon here, but any company in the top 500, you can go to them. You can see how they perform against the rest of the list, how they perform against others in the sector, and then you can also compare any other retailer in the list that you want. You can add them into the same charts. You just get an extra line to see how those two are doing compared to each other.
So another elite retailer in this list is Screwfix. Slightly different business model, as they mostly deal with tradespeople, and because they're dealing with people that are working and on jobs and on sites, for them time is money. And what Screwfix stood out for is their collection service. If you order something online, it can be at one of the branches in 60 minutes, so you're not missing out on job time. They're also very ahead of the game when it comes to returns. If you've ordered, again, I'm not a tradie, so if you've ordered the wrong screwdriver, I'm not sure they would, they'll make returning it really easy for you. There's a brilliant interview in the report. It's over double pages, and it just looks at their new city format, which is really interesting. They are putting smaller Screwfix units into high footfall locations, something else B&Q are doing, something IKEA are doing, stepping away from these big, massive superstores and popping up on Oxford Street where you can buy a candle or some glasses. So there's a real flexibility here, but Sue Hayes spoke to us and just stressed that everything that Screwfix do is with their customer in mind and making sure they can get things when they need them and quickly to make sure that they don't lose out on the job. And it's really sort of putting the customer first is another reason why Screwfix are an elite retailer. So I'm going to hand over to Martin again, because our research, it isn't just about rankings and lists. We do country reports, we do sector reports, And we've got some brand new reports, our 360 reports, which are combining two traditional styles. Do you want to tell us a little more?
So in the 360 reports, at the start of the report, we have a series of information about the market. So if we have, say, one on Germany, we'll look at sort of economic growth prospects for the next few years. We look at the size of the retail market in particular, how online versus offline that is, device spread, comparisons to the rest of Europe and other countries, and then we will move into a ranking of the top 100 retailers, selected the same way that we select the top 500 that I was talking about before. So significance is what gets them in the list, and then we rank them according to their performance after that. And so we are giving a sort of, the reason for the name is we're giving a kind of a holistic thing. You're getting the macro view of the market as well as who are the specific retailers, and then some case studies on those leading performers as well.
I did promise you a QR code. There's also the link down the bottom, and that would take you to the full report. Today's just meant to be a little snapshot. There is multiple retailer case studies in there, all illustrated with graphs and charts. There's a section dedicated to the consumer and what the consumer wants. There's also a look at how the economy is affecting the UK retail industry. And then this is coming in October. So if you don't fancy reading a full report, if you don't want editorial analysis but you just want access to the charts, this is RetailX Intelligence. If you do have any questions on this platform, I direct you to the MD of RetailX Intelligence, Rob. Rob, wave. Thank you. Any questions about this, you can ask him. We are going to be around. That's everything we've got slide-wise today. Thank you very much for listening.